On. All right. Hello, welcome to another club meeting. Aviator training is what we're talking about. I'd like to start out with a story. Is that okay with you? All right. That was almost half a thumbs up. All right. About 10 years ago, we served a humanitarian mission in the Marshall Islands, a little island actually called Tarawa, out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We were there for about 2 years. Part of our responsibility was to help with the air service. So after 5 or 6 months, we were able to get an airplane over and start flying the islands. Well, we had some really interesting experiences flying out there. It's a lot different than flying in the States. If you know much about that area, that was a big World War II area. They have airstrips on almost every island out there. Really cool World War II airstrips that they've maintained and we're able to fly into. My first experience was checking out a guy in the islands in the airplane. The airplane was a Piper Aztec. This Piper Aztec was set up really well to fly in and out of these World War II airstrips. My first experience was with a student that I think he probably had about 5,000 hours, but hadn't flown in a while and was wanting to get checked out in the Aztec. So we flew to an island about 20 minutes away. When we arrived at the islands, he knew where the airstrip was. I had no idea where it was. And even at a high vantage point with the tall trees on the island, it was really difficult to see where the airstrip was because it was just a little path cut in between the coconut trees. So as we were flying in, he's trying to point the airplane out to me. Michelle's in the back laughing because I couldn't see the airport to save my life. So he kept saying, just go this way. So I kept going that way. And we were supposed to line up on a base leg. And again, I still couldn't see the airport at all, had no clue where it was. Even when we were on base leg, I still hadn't seen the airport. Well, he's still pointing it out to me. Finally, as we start to, he tells me to turn final. And I finally saw the airport. We came in and made a landing. That got me to thinking about how important it is to do pre-flight planning. All my life, I'd used an acronym called the PPA process, Purpose, Plan, and Action. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. In our previous discussions, we've always related aviation ideas and things that have happened to real life and how we can benefit by them. Well, this one's huge. Flight planning in an airplane, especially out in the islands, is imperative. In fact, it's law. It's required out there. It's not in the United States, as you probably know. But in the islands, it's absolutely essential and it's required. So, the thing I wanted to do this evening, this is a typical flight plan form put out by the FAA. Again, this is not required, but it's highly recommended. If we're going to take a flight to Salt Lake, it's best to fill one of these out, file it, so that they know where we're going. If we don't get there, they can come looking for us. With that in mind, let's talk about how important it is in the airplane. Again, not only in the States, but especially in the islands. But in my opinion, I think you're doing yourself a big disservice by not using a flight plan, even though it's not required. You've got an extra set of eyes on you, and if something happens, they know quickly to come and start looking for you and know your route of flight, your altitude, how much fuel, people on board, everything about the flight. So with that in mind, let's talk about the islands again. What do you think would happen if you didn't have a flight plan and you didn't have a destination in mind? You just said, hey, let's go up and fly around, see where we go. Well, unlike the United States, there's not airports close by that you can see or that you can navigate to. So if you don't plan really well, you could end up going way out in the ocean with no clue how to get back to the islands.
Amelia Earhart.
Yeah. So flight planning is imperative. If we hopped in the airplane and just took off and said, let's just go fly over the ocean, and we weren't paying attention, it would be so easy to get lost out there and get to the point of no return. In other words, get far enough out that you couldn't get back. The point of no return is not a good feeling. So, one of the first things we want to do in flight planning is have a destination in mind. So if we're going to go to Salt Lake, we want to write down, we're going to go to Salt Lake. This is the purpose of the flight. This is our destination. If we don't have that, it's still extremely easy to get lost. A lot more in the islands, but still, I've been lost in the States numerous times in my early days of flying. The navigational equipment wasn't real good. I remember one flight, I had my dad in the right seat, my brothers in the back. We were headed to Utah, and I ended up getting lost. We started hitting some weather, and I started deviating a little bit, and finally ended up having to do a 180-degree turn because the weather was getting bad. Well, I ended up landing at an airport that I had no idea what the airport even was, because it was out in the middle of Nevada with very little navigational equipment. Luckily, we were able to make a 180 and land, wait the weather out. But in my opinion, that was terrible pre-flight planning. I could have done a lot better job. And from that point on, that was in the early days. That was probably probably over 40 years ago. I learned a lot from that and flying in the islands as to how important this is. Once I started thinking about that and thinking, how does that apply to life? I started realizing that it has a lot of implications in life. If you've read any of Stephen R. Covey's books, he talks a lot about begin with the destination in mind. In flight planning, that's imperative as well. In life, that's imperative. If we don't know where we're going, how do you know when you get there or how you get there? That's how most people live their lives. They just let the wind blow them wherever they want to go. They don't use the purpose, plan, and action acronym, the PPA process. So number one, begin with the destination in mind. So if we're going to take a flight to Salt Lake, good, we write that down. That's our destination. We're not going to end up in Las Vegas. We're going to do enough flight planning to know the heading, the altitude, the mountains, the navigational aids, everything that the flight plan asks us to give. So, destination in mind, first and foremost. If we're going to go into business, do a business, do you think it's important to have a destination? In other words, know where we're going, know what we want to accomplish. Yeah, and we've talked a lot about that, haven't we? So that's a key principle right there. The next one is purpose. So what's the purpose of our flight, or what's the purpose of anything we do? If we've got a destination without a purpose, that really doesn't do us a whole lot of good. If we've got a business and we have a destination, but we don't know what our purpose is it going to do much good? No, not much at all. So that's the second key principle in the purpose, plan, and action process. So what's our purpose for taking the flight to Salt Lake? Once we've written that down, once we've gotten this flight plan, the very first thing it asks is, what type of flight is it? Is it in visual conditions or instrument conditions? What's the weather like? Next thing it asks, aircraft identification. Who are we? And what are our capabilities? Next is departure time. Estimated time en route. Do you think those things are important to know in life? Definitely. If we don't write these things down, again, we're just going to get blown around with the wind and have no idea, no focus in our lives. I really like this form the FAA has put together because every single one of these blocks specifically apply to life. The next one it talks about is destination. Do we know everything about our destination? If we don't, how are we going to get there? Time en route, remarks, fuel on board. How does all of this apply to life? Let me go over each one. First, number one, rules. What rules do we have to follow? Well, that's pretty important in life, pretty important in business. We break laws, we start getting confined, losing our freedom. Number two, who are we? Well, knowing who we are is extremely important in life. If we don't know who we are and have confidence in who we are, that can create some problems. Our capabilities. Is it important to know our capabilities? Absolutely. And if we don't have the capabilities, for example, in business, gathering people around us that do is vital to the business. Starting point, another key in the flight plan, route of flight. The way I look at route of flight is principles. What principles are we going to follow? The principles we've talked about in aviator training, there's 21 of them. If we even break one of those principles, our chances of success diminish. So again, we talked about in sports using proper principles associated with the sport we're doing. If we don't know the principles associated with that sport, we're not going to be very good at it. If we don't know the principles of success in life, we're not going to be successful at it. That's the whole purpose of aviator training. Destination again. Having that destination and having it first and foremost in our mind is the key to the rest of these principles. We can always have our eye on that destination. And then if we follow the principles associated with this flight or with life, our chances of a good outcome are enhanced tremendously. I hope you guys as young people can really grasp the concept of knowing these principles. They not only apply to flight, they apply to life. So if you don't have one of these forms, do a search for it. It's just a simple FAA flight plan. The thing I'd like to have you do, get one of these forms and write down, how does this apply to life? The first one, type of aircraft, the capability. In other words, look at your capabilities. That's important. Departure point, where are you at right now? Are you letting the wind take you wherever it's going to take you? Or do you have a specific destination in mind? Knowing your capabilities, knowing your starting point, knowing how much fuel you've got on board. In other words, what's my energy level? What's my desire to become successful in life? If you have a low desire, that's when people start getting blown around by the wind and not knowing where they're going, and they'll end up who knows where. You want to end up where you want to end up, and that's what this flight plan will do for you. If you take it and look at it and apply it to life and the principles we talk about in aviator training, and more especially, Russ has a simulator. Man, that's invaluable for learning every single principle, not only of flight, but a principle of an aviator. In other words, wisdom. You can't learn this stuff in an airplane. A simulator is the best place to learn these principles and get them in your mind and actually feel and see what's happening. When you do that, then it's solidified in your mind and you can really realize how important they are and how to utilize them, not only for flying, but for success in life. Does that make sense? All right, so as we apply the 21 principles of aviator training, utilizing this flight plan, that's really the key to the whole aviator training program. In the next class, we're going to be talking about the learning process, training. Wow, that's one that, again, for you guys, if you learn how to learn, You can learn quickly. How many have heard of Elon Musk? Uh, so, Musk, man, look at what he's done, the success in his life. He's actually tried to teach people what he's done to become successful. As I've followed him and what he's trying to teach, it's aviator training, it's flight planning principles. Every single one of the things that he's implemented is an aviator principle. And again, the best way to learn it is an aviation simulator. So if you don't have a simulator, my recommendation is to get one or get with Russ and take some flights, learn these principles, and learn how to apply them to life, because that's where you'll learn them the best. And next month, when we talk about training, you're going to learn some principles there, 3 important principles that are 3 of the 21 principles of aviator training. Well, when you learn those, you're going to be able to learn quickly. Let's talk about the last principle this evening in the purpose, plan, and action process. So we've talked about the destination, talked about the purpose, we've talked about the plan. Now let's talk about the action. The action says, put your plan into action with dates for its accomplishment. If you don't have a specific time to do something, chances are it's not going to happen. But there's one other principle that I actually learned from Musk and a couple other places, but he uses this to a high degree, and that is consistent. In other words, you know your destination, you know your purpose, you know your plan. Do something every single day without fail. If you want to get there, just one thing. If you're in business, maybe you're working on a website, update something, make a call, place an ad, do at least something every single day to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And again, this is something specific to do, not just, I'll read up on how to do something better. No, you need to do something, take some action each and every day to move your business forward. In life, other than business or aviation, if you're wanting to be a high-level athlete or a missionary or whatever you want to become, do one thing every single day. I've learned that that is the most important part of this whole process, the whole purpose, plan, and action process. If you don't do one thing every day, chances are you're not going to be successful. You're not going to reach your destination. So let me ask you, would you rather have $1 million or a penny doubling every day? 1 penny doubling every day. What would you choose? The million or the penny?
I think I would choose the penny.
So I'm going to give you $1 million right now and walk away, or I'm going to give you 1 penny. What are you going to take? Doubling every day. One penny.
1 penny.
Good choice. What's that penny doing? It's doing its purpose, which is doubling every single day without fail. If you did that, I want you to look it up. You would be a multi-millionaire in 30 days. 30 days. Look it up on your phone and tell me the exact figure. I think it's like 5 point something million. So look up a penny doubling every day. What's this showing us? It's showing us that this principle of action, which is a principle that aviators use to become successful, not only in flight, but in life as well. It's showing us that a little bit of effort consistently every day will get us exactly where we want to be. What'd you find?
I'm looking it up here.
Haven't found anything yet? Okay. All right, so let me just say, if you don't get anything out of aviator training tonight, this is what I want you to always remember. That number one, begin with a destination in mind and take action to get to that destination every single day. If you're wanting to get to heaven, what should you do every day? Do something, maybe scripture study, prayer, whatever the case may be. Do it without fail. That's going to move you towards where you want to be there. If you want to be a successful athlete, successful business person, or successful in anything, have that destination in mind, the purpose, the plan, take action. So again, if you don't get anything else out of it, pick your destination and do something about it every day. What'd you come up with, Russ?
Over $10 million. Let's see here.
So $10,737,418 in 30 days.
10 millionaires.
Most people would take the $1 million because they don't have the knowledge of this penny doubling every day. That's what's happening to people all over the country, all over the world. They're not relying on these principles. They're following practices, not principles. Again, that's what we're here in aviator training to teach you how to do. Remember that penny doubling every day. That's a principle. Taking the $1 million would be considered a practice. You can see what a huge, huge difference that is. That's the difference between an aviator and a pilot. An aviator knows that a penny doubling every day is going to be worth 10 times what the $1 million is going to be. But most pilots are simply pilots. They know how to horse the airplane around in the air and get it back on the ground. Most people are like pilots. They can just horse around in life and let it carry them wherever it's going to carry them and end up broke when they're done. An aviator knows the principles. There's 21 of them. We've covered 3 tonight. We've covered 3 each previous club meeting. We've got 3 more lessons to cover, 9 more principles. When you get those 21 principles ingrained in your mind, and again, a simulator is the best way to do that. With a simulator, you can have hands-on experience to learn these principles and become an aviator rather than just a pilot. If you haven't experienced that, I invite you to experience it. It's life-changing. These principles are life-changing. If you'll use them, you will be successful. There is no question. So when you think about the difference between principles and practices, think about the penny doubling every day. That's the principle. And if you consistently do that with whatever you want to do, with your destination in mind, you are going to get there. And you're not going to end up broke at the end of your life. Hope you've enjoyed aviator training this evening. If you have any questions, we'll talk about it afterwards. But again, learn these principles. Next week or next month, we'll talk about training, exciting stuff. I hope you'll be here. I hope you'll follow these principles. Thank you.